Welcome to my view from the piano bench. We do this Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. or usually 7 p.m. Sometimes it runs late. Anyway, on my Joe Holt's Notes YouTube channel, I'm distracted already. Perfect. In addition to Piano for My Friends on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. So for this side of the street, Piano for My Friends, I've been talking about musical concepts or experiences or some combination of the two. And lately I've been inclined to look at particular tunes and just use that tune as a vehicle for talking about ideas or concepts or experiences, like I've said, but I do it through tunes. So not just the lesson on the tune, so to speak. And what I was thinking of doing today is using this tune. O Tannenbaum. But at least in my universe, I can't extricate that from the Vince Guaraldi treatment of it, which has kind of become the standard jazz musician's treatment of O Tannenbaum. You know what I mean? The Charlie Brown Christmas version. Nice little swinging version. Now, some jazz musicians will purposely not do that version and will do it in 3 because it's written in 3. Wait a minute. Now I don't know which way to go with the 3. This way. Okay. And there's stuff I could talk about, but it just seemed like O Tannenbaum was a funny subject line, and a better subject line, the more I thought of it, or topic title, was A Charlie Brown Christmas. I'm going to more focus on the O Tannenbaum, but I want to talk about that phenomenon more in general because it just captivates me and has my whole life pretty much. I was 5 years old when the first A Charlie Brown Christmas aired, and I was aware of it. I was excited about it. That was a whole other era where if you had the annual special, whatever it was, but in this case Charlie Brown, and eventually Thanksgiving and Halloween and the Great Pumpkin and You're in Love, Charlie Brown, and all of those, if you weren't in front of the television that one time a year, you didn't get to see it. So it was a huge deal, right? And I remember watching it, and of course knowing the story. I'm not even sure where to jump in with all this. I did not give myself notes. I'm attempting to go stream of consciousness. Watch out, be warned. But I think I'm going to pretty much talk about O Tannenbaum and just keep coming back to the general theme of A Charlie Brown Christmas. And Vince Guaraldi. Vince Guaraldi, of whom I am no expert, and can only speak in general terms, but general terms will do here in that it's hard to imagine anyone more influential in bringing jazz music to the general public's awareness and acceptance. And this is a good topic here. Because up until the mid 40s or maybe later 40s or in there, what was understood to be jazz music was popular music. That was the whole Great American Songbook era and the era of the big bands. Now, was all popular music jazz music? No. Uh, but improvised music, jazz, and the swing bands who played it as opposed to the sweet bands, and the best version of that people my age can remember is Guy Lombardo, because he hung around for it. Lawrence Welk was kind of that way too. It was more commercialized, but they were really good swinging bands. Benny Goodman and Charlie Barnett, and then of course after that bands that just took it for Duke Ellington and so forth, and that music was the popular expression of the culture, along with other music, right? Particularly in the 30s, and the Goodman Trio and all of that. And very few people argue today that music from back then isn't jazz, but it's treated as if it isn't jazz by being ignored in jazz education in favor of starting jazz with the vocabulary that was codified or rearranged or organized for bebop. And so basically with Charlie Parker and comrades there, that's what you learn of jazz. And you don't really learn anything about jazz academically before the mid-40s, before Charlie Parker. And that includes the Great American Songbook, because jazz wasn't academic. It was just there. it just happened. It was accessible, not because it was being tried to be made. I can't put that sentence together. That anybody was trying to make it accessible. It was accessible because nobody was trying not to make it accessible. And look at it that way, maybe, right? And there wasn't this, and funny, this is going to seem like it has no tie-in whatsoever, but I was drawn back to a particular Keith Jarrett video that's really influential to me in later years, earlier today, and looking at it, and understanding, which I had already understood, that Keith did not have an agenda. And if he wanted to do something that was simple and harmonics, he would, and I'm thinking of that particular video, I can't think of too many or any, high-end contemporary jazz people, or just contemporary jazz people in general, who wouldn't purposefully put the agendized thing in there, the jazz speak, as they understand it, the push the envelope contemporary harmony, because that's what jazz is. Well, no. But yeah, in terms of like succumbing to, the voices that scream the loudest, which is who defines the agenda. Boy, we went down a rabbit hole really quick, but I knew this topic would take me there. That's why I'm just hoping I can keep track of my rabbit holes, because don't have anything written down. Yeah, so the idea of playing tunes is kind of lost in contemporary jazz. And that's why I love the Dave McKenna quote that I want to make my own at this point. The older I get, the less I consider myself a jazz player and more a song player. And in some regards, I don't consider myself a jazz player at all. Just improvise. And I have some of the jazz speak, but that's never what drew me in. Just melodies and tunes and stuff. right? So how did this all come out of me? Because I had mentioned that Vince Guaraldi, and now this was the better part of a generation. We'll just say a generation beyond where jazz lost the public, right? And that's the cool thing about this. And Vince Guaraldi did not come into jazz uh, with, from that agendized place. I think he called himself a reformed boogie woogie piano player, you know, and so he had sensibilities of connecting with people to begin with. And when he became, in his own conception, a more serious jazz musician, he didn't throw those sensibilities away. And so the music he wrote connected with people, or just the music he played. Now, this is certainly, harmonically hip in jazz speak to a reasonable extent. Especially like, 60s Vince Guaraldi hip. To the point where, if you're not an informed musician, a jazz player or somebody who knows the harmonic vocabulary, you can't play that tune. Because major 7, dominant sharp 11, descending, right? And that's when it gets interesting to see covers of tunes like this in pop music today. It's not about the music in the same way that it was back in the Great American Songbook era, or how jazz musicians have continued it, like Vince Guaraldi, or really any other jazz musician in this regard. It's a lot more about lyrics. It's about you get your chords on the guitar that work for you, and it's not about, and I'm not disparaging this right now. I'm just trying to catalog or categorize or organize thought that it's not about mastering your instrument in a classical kind of sense. It's about getting to where you can say the things you want to say. So I've seen younger people who want to cover "Christmas Time Is Here," right, on YouTube, and I mean, nothing that they're going to do quarterly is going to actually work. And then they just don't care, and people who listen don't care. And then the whole sort of, things start to fall apart at that point. I don't know if I can get to the point where I can have this and organize and just say it all in an hour, which really means I should be able to say it in a minute. Presentation of where popular music is today in that regard. I do have a presentation, which is its losses connection with the evolution of Western music up till now, which is what happened with rock and roll. It separated anti-convention, counterculture, anti-authority, and jazz music, popular music, everything up till that point was still connected to the harmonic foundations that evolved in history and have been continued in jazz. Contemporary jazz it is where those harmonic foundations are still used and built upon, but it's been done in such a way that most people don't want to listen to it, if I can put it harshly. And I'm not degrading it. I'm just saying it's not now about being accessible. So leave that rabbit hole behind and just say that we'll circle the idea that Vince Guaraldi did a magical thing, right? He took jazz music and then, because of the opportunity he was given, he made it, he delivered it to the masses. We all love that music. Very few people don't. I don't know anybody who doesn't. You know, young people, old people, musicians, non-musicians, musicians really respect it. And even if they don't entirely respect Vince Guaraldi in that, they don't think he's like one of the greatest pianists in the world or whatever, they absolutely respect what he did. I don't know a jazz musician who doesn't honor Vince Guaraldi. But now we get to another fork in the road. I spot a water. I fork in the road, right? That music was given a forum, and I love the story of how that happened. And since I read it in what seemed to be an authorized and authoritative account of the history, I'm gonna assume it's true, and I like it, so it's true. That Vince Guaraldi had recorded "Cast Your Fate to the Wind," and I don't know if it was 62 or 63, but it was early 60s. This thing. And he had made a little bit of a splash with it. In fact, he had a hit record. An instrumental jazz trio. That never happens. Well, it seldom happens. But Vince Guaraldi did it. Proving right away that he was accessible, but hip, and people loved it, and it was being played on the radio all the time, especially in San Francisco, where he lived. Compact version of Cast Your Fate to the Wind. And as the story goes, and again, I think it's a true story, this is certainly true, that Lee Mendelson, who was the producer for what would become the Charlie Brown Christmas special, he was the one who pushed it all through and basically told Charles Schultz, hey, I sold it. I sold a Charlie Brown Christmas. What's a Charlie Brown Christmas? That's something we're going to write today. That was like the phone call that happened. And there's actually, now I want to tell that whole story, because that's also important culturally too. But anyhow, I should talk about this for a month. No, I shouldn't. Yes, I should. Paradox. Anyhow, so the story goes that Lee Mendelson, who needed music now for this. And of course, the sensibilities that they brought to Charlie Brown Christmas was anathema. It was totally against what the network executives wanted. That's an important part of this story. And had the network executives seen the final product before 2 weeks before it was to air, it would not have aired because they hated it. They hated everything about it. No laugh track, child voices, characters with, depth of emotion and feeling, a religious reference, jazz music, wrong, no, ick, and the program only was aired because they were already committed to it. It was advertised. It was out there, right? And of course, what happened was it exploded. And I get my Grammys and Emmys and stuff mixed up, but whatever award Charles Schulz won for Charlie Brown Christmas, I believe the words he said in his acceptance speech is, "Charlie Brown is not used to winning." So the whole, I guess we have like Lee Mendelson and like running behind deadlines and just basically Providence to thank for having all of this wonderful Vince Guaraldi music. Now, let alone all the Charlie Brown specials and all that it means to people like, my age and many other ages actually. But if we go back, I was talking about Vince Guaraldi's music. When Lee Mendelson was riding through San Francisco in a cab, he was doing something in San Francisco, and apparently in 63 or 60, whatever it was, every radio station, or 64, I don't know, but every radio station was playing Cast Your Fate to the Wind because, Guaraldi was a San Francisco, guy. And Lee Mendelson heard it for the first time and said, I think out loud, "That's the music I want for Charlie Brown. Who is that guy?" And, Cast Your Fate to the Wind, and this is cool, that Vince Guaraldi had no idea that was his audition piece for something that he never knew was going to happen, and nobody did until it did. And all of a sudden, Vince Guaraldi had that forum. He had that place to write all this music that came out of him that, when you listen to this, kind of sound, you can tell it's from the same guy who wrote Cast Your Fate to the Wind, right? Super cool stuff. Camptown Races. Actually, I think he recorded that for one of the soundtracks. So, one of the tunes, I forget, for shows. But anyway, it was off to the races. And the thing that's distracting me now is that I don't know what I'm going to title this in terms of a topic. I'll decide when I get done. But it was going to be a Charlie Brown Christmas, and it may be Vince Guaraldi. I don't know, but because there's again so much to talk about. But again, going back, I'm sort of staying organized. No, really. that we're talking about that sort of magic place where art is embraced, accessible, but not written or delivered with commercial intent. Vince Guaraldi wasn't like, okay, what's the hook I can use? Now, of course, I mean, he had his signature thing, but it wasn't like, okay, what do people want to hear, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to stray from that because I want to have a platinum record. You know, he was just doing his thing. You know, and people were getting hip to it, and I guess this is another point that can be made. Uh, and I never put this together until now, but those network executives who would have not allowed a Charlie Brown Christmas to air are the equivalent of what I call the music industry evil machine, you know, and I find it interesting that someone I know who was in that for a while, you know, uh, used that term, not knowing that I used it. I was in the machine, so I was like, okay, yeah, that is the term, and it's not about art. It's not about substance or depth. It's about selling records, and we don't say records anymore, but it's it, and yeah, uh, and somehow a Charlie Brown Christmas got through. And I guess I have to call this a Charlie Brown Christmas because if it weren't for a Charlie Brown Christmas, we wouldn't know about Vince Guaraldi, right? And all that wonderful music that that we love, but in all those Charlie Brown shows that we're now all sad that aren't on network TV anymore. Uh, Totally understandable. I see, in comment threads with posts about it and stuff, people are all mad at Apple and how could you do this and put it back on network TV. If it could be on network TV, it would be, but we're moving away from that. And, younger people aren't even watching network TV, uh, or have, cable subscriptions and stuff. Everybody's streaming. And yeah, I want things the way it was before. I am sad that in the mainstream of the general culture, because back then there were 3 television networks plus PBS, right? Uh, and so if something was on network TV, everybody saw it, or everybody could see it, or everybody knew about it if they wanted to know about it, or if you wanted them to know about it. So it's like a Charlie Brown Christmas was accessible to everyone. All the Charlie Brown specials were accessible to everyone. And now that's not the case. A lot of little kids are not going to grow up with Charlie Brown the way I did, and many of us did, and probably you did. And that makes us sad. But we can't go back and say, okay, put it back on network TV because that's not going to fix it. Although Apple is a subscription service, everything is now, Apple TV bought the rights. And that's good because it does get to continue, and they actually they produce new content. The Snoopy Show. And, I've kind of gone in and out, and I'm right now in with subscription to Apple TV just for that. And of course, I can watch all the holiday specials on demand whenever I want, and for the most part, I think the Snoopy Show does a reasonably good job with preserving the legacy. Because we're talking generations removed now from when that all started, and to honor that, even in sort of the general way, like the music is going to kind of resemble that, and the animation is going to kind of resemble that, and the content's going to be wholesome, and and all that is there, generations after the fact, really does speak loudly to the impact that has had. Now, once we get another 60 or so years down the road, it will have faded into more of a niche. That's inevitable, right? Uh, but it's still there. It's still accessible. People are still going to find it. Anybody with an Apple TV subscription who has a young child is going to show them Charlie Brown. You know, and because of the uproar a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 or whenever it was, that Apple TV bought the rights, and the point made that Apple TV was going to create new content, you know, and that secured them the rights. That's huge. So don't just say, let us keep our Charlie Brown Christmas. Actually, let us continue the evolution, the legacy of that. There's new content. It's really cool, you know. And without Charles Schultz here to do it, I think it's pretty good content, really. So anyway, how cool is all that? Yeah. That was fun. That needed to come out of me, I guess. Uh, but that's the tune that I enjoy playing the most. And when I thought about just making this about this tune, I was going to talk about musical things within this, and I think I'll do that now, just a little bit. And of course, the primary thing about making this work in sounding like the Giraldi version, you know, which I'm sure you remember when Linus and Charlie Brown walk into the Christmas tree display, and it starts, and then there's words coming out of Linus and Charlie Brown like fantastic and knocking on the metal Christmas tree. This really brings Christmas close to a person. Gee, Charlie Brown, do they still make wooden Christmas trees? Anyway. You get past that little rubato intro, and then classic jazz trio. Now, the problem with doing that solo piano is I can't be a trio, but I can be a duo. Or at least I can be a one-handed piano player and a bass player. And what Vince Guaraldi, of course, did, because he didn't do left-hand bass, I have no, indication of that. And most pianists don't, or if they do, they touch it, they learn how to do it a little bit and then get away from it. Very few live there. Dave McKenna was the live there guy. I was more of a live there guy before. I'm becoming a little bit more of a, that's a big, weapon in my toolbox. Weapon in my toolbox? That's a big tool in my arsenal, or my weaponry, whatever, but it's not the only thing I do. In fact, really just very recently, when I perform O Tannenbaum, I'll move to stride. And I never used to do that. It was just all left-hand bass all the time. I'll on the can, but also because that's how the recording is, and that's how people used to hearing it. But what did Vince Guaraldi do with his left hand during the recording? Right? He just comped chords. But all jazz players, well, most all jazz players, but I'm not a jazz player. So I don't count. I don't know. But what they'll do with a rhythm section, right? With a bass player, you voice your chords in a certain place, bass is down here, right? But, and of course I can't do anything to portray what the drums are doing, except rhythmically swing and maybe, you know, tap my foot on 2 and 4. But then when you do that, you annoy people, you know, some people. And that sounds nice and good, but you know, it's not the same as hearing that walking bass line. So, you know, I'm in a position because left-hand bass is kind of my bag. You know, that I can pretty much, you know, it sounds haughty, but I'm going to say it. As close as you're going to get, solo piano, to feeling what that feels like, you know, in the Gorali recording, you know, it's where I'm going to go. I mean, there's a lot I don't do and can't do, which I don't demonstrate for people. So, you know, we just do what we can. But this I can do. Big jazz beat guy, you know, modern hip vocabulary, but the cute things like, you know, like do the half step up, suspend the, you know, the 2/5 up the half step and back down. That stuff is fun. So that Charlie Brown, I mean that old Tannenbaum, what people really relate to and remember about it, it's just how good it feels, right? I mean, it's just little relaxed, beautiful groove, you know. And this is, you know, first aired in, you know, 1965, and young people were all hip to it, and none of them were listening to old swinging jazz, but now they were. Because it felt really, really good. I came across this tutorial in one of the jazz education YouTube channels, and the idea was, and it was, you know, very, very contemporary jazz approach, but you know, the title was, well, actually the title was "Why Do I Still Suck?" But the idea was that no matter how hip, what hip things you're playing or how hip your harmonic structure is, if you don't have a rhythmic foundation and you're not in the pocket, it doesn't mean anything. And he kind of admitted that, you know, when you get right down to it, it just has to be in the pocket. It has to groove. And the example he used was a swinging example. It was a monk example, but not unlike, and what makes that so important and accessible, but not because it's dumbed down. It's accessible because it's so good at what it does, which is like lay it in the pocket, you know. And you know, the guy making the presentation, and because I'm characterizing this, I'm not telling you what the site it is or anything. The guy making the presentation kind of comes out and admits that yeah, I know we want that all to matter, but really, you know, and of course, if you play just any notes over solid time, you're going to sound like, you know, you're playing out contemporary jazz, but that's kind of what it is, you know. But if it's got the time, it's got the groove, you know, and yeah, you know, the Don Glandon, who I studied for 3 years with, my exposure into, you know, more actual academic jazz, you know, would say the one, and he would not call it a concession, you know, but the one like thing he would do, the way he put it, to connect with people, because he wasn't really concerned about connecting with people. He had the more of the, you know, the painting hanging in the museum is great, and if it moves you, great, then you get it. If you don't get it, I can't help you. kind of thing. Oh well, you know. Uh, but one thing he said he would do, I would characterize it differently, but he would do is he would put it in the pocket. He would give you something to tap your foot to. Really, really important. But then, what happens in that Giraldi stuff is it's just so perfectly there, and that's that's the important ingredient in any contemporary music. Jazz, rock, hip hop, anything. In the pocket. And it's like, yeah, and jazz has become so harmonically constructed, and jazz musicians are judging other jazz musicians based on their vocabulary. I remember when I was for a time doing the adjunct faculty at a local college, and I was leading the jazz combo. And then it's a small college, and it really wasn't a jazz program, but there was another jazz musician there. And because he was the teacher of two of my jazz combo members, they would tell me things. And there was some recording that I did with some of the kids, and right away this other prof, wanted to get the recording so he could find my solo and listen to it and basically evaluate me. And I know how he was evaluating me, vocabulary, and I know how I scored. And I am pretty confident that this guy, I'm not really considered a serious jazz musician in the sense that he teaches it. But then what he teaches, this is academia in general, so I'm not dumping on him. What is taught is all of that stuff, notes to pay, clothes to, even if you learn the standard stuff and the not complex vocabulary, but it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? And so if you're one to play music, and let's say you're learning stride piano, right? Or you play stride piano, and you're kind of enraptured, or you're drawn to vehicles or devices, the things that happen, the walking movements. So the typical jazz learning approach is to transcribe, or is to, figure out a way, whether you write it down or not. Transcribing would be notating it, but figuring out what was being played so you can play it yourself. Which is not a road I took, but that's your typical road. But I've never actually tried to say this where I'm going to be held to a record of having said it. So let me think about this. If you can do that to learn the vocabulary and learn to, discover things and work out things and practice things you haven't before, perfect. But only really perfect if you can deliver it in time, right? Because without the feel, all of the wonderful vocabulary kind of doesn't speak. It kind of just sits there. It doesn't have life until whatever your groove is, your stride groove. So let's say to the person who is working out their stride patterns, What's the most important thing to do? Put your metronome on. Do I have my phone with me? I purposely moved it so it wasn't here. You know what? Let me grab it because I didn't want it to be in the screen. Yes, I'm ridiculous. I have two phones, one I'm recording with, and but I use the metronome app on the phone, which is superior really to a metronome you can purchase. So let me see. Let's just say, okay, 54. Okay, right now this is not my best presentation of it, but that'll have to do. And I have it really loud, so it was. I don't practice with it that loud, but that was the metronome 1, 2, and 4. And if if you're a musician and you've not practiced playing tunes with the metronome 1, 2, and 4, do it, right? And because whatever it is you're playing. If it ain't got that swing, okay, I'm gonna kind of stop there with that detour. So that Vince Guaraldi trio, that O Tannenbaum, it just feels so good when you listen to it. But it all feels so good. Know that really well, right? I need to know some of these tunes, better, and Frida with the naturally curly hair. The Charlie Brown theme. Rats. I already know no one likes me. Why do we have to have a holiday season to emphasize it? There we go. So I was playing this gig back when I was doing the Sullivan Steakhouse gigs where they had jazz in the bar, upscale place, 7 nights a week, and I was playing with the bass player, and it was the night a Charlie Brown Christmas was being aired on the television. Ha! And of course the sound was off, but the TV was on the corner, and I'm watching it. The piano's facing the thing. And man, I don't get to watch it, but I am watching it, but I'm playing. I spoke most, if not all, the dialogue while I was playing. I was very, very, very proud of myself. And then finally, one story, and if you know me, you've heard me tell this story, so bear with me. I just love this story. After I give a concert somewhere, back when I was doing a lot of things in churches, but not just hymns and stuff, but jazz things. had my little requisite, talk about Charlie Brown, Vince Guaraldi, and all that, because I love to bring that up. And a woman comes up to me afterwards and tells me the story of when she was first married and went to a Christmas Eve service with her husband. But it was the first time she had ever gone to a church, because she wasn't a churchgoer. But her husband was. At least he wanted to go for a Christmas Eve service, so she was going to be with him. So it was her first exposure to that environment. She said she was just taking it all in. But when they got to the point in the service where the minister read the account of the birth of Christ from the book of Luke, she said she got all excited, leaned over to her husband and said, "Listen, honey, he's quoting Linus." Yes. And I guess to wrap it up, we'll just use the bow of how inspired I am by the contributions that have been made in this whole Charlie Brown regard. And of course, top of that, food chain is Charles Schulz, who is really a role model for someone in the arts who wants to truly communicate to people, and be a messenger of revelation. I don't talk in theological or Christian terms typically, but if I were to do that, music itself is part of the creation, and it's a window beyond. It moves. It's so special, but it also connects us with nature, vibrations, right? And in theological speak, that would be general revelation. Now, if you're a believer in Scripture, you would say, excuse me, barely. Yeah. I've never done that on camera before. And actually, that was mild. Sometimes my sneezing fits can go on, and it's only a problem when I'm driving in a traffic circle. But anyhow, I hope I'm not, allergic to, revelation. But Scripture, but in theological speak, Scripture would be considered special revelation, unique messages, and creation would be general revelation. The basically, if you want to feel close to God, go walk on the beach, or hike in the mountains, and there's no theology involved in that, right? Or absorb yourself in music. A minister friend years ago gave me his assessment. He said, "Joe, I minister God's special revelation to people. You minister general revelation to people." There, I drew back the curtain. A little theology speak. And so to see somebody like Charles Schulz be, a Christian in the arts, doing, not proselytizing, even though Linus read the account, there was no altar call. That wasn't it. It was a Christmas special. And the story is, although Charles Schulz got pressure, including from Lee Mendelson and pretty much everybody else, not to put the reading from Luke in there, he said, if we don't do it, who will? He was right, but, there was no other reference to that in any of his other specials. That's not what he was about. He says that was Christmas. So that's what Christmas is all about, and that's one of the reasons why the network executives hated it, but look what the guy did, and look how he just reach the hearts of people. And that's where, you know, whatever your sense of spirituality is, it comes from here. It doesn't come from here. And art comes to here. So I love Charles Schulz and everything associated with the whole Peanuts thing. I could go on and on, which has nothing to do with music. But then you bring in the Giraldi, you know, thing, and the music thing, and it's just also perfect. All right, we're still what? I don't know what date it is anymore. Like a week and a half ish, or a little more. Yeah, away from Christmas. I'll say Merry Christmas now, but hope I'll see you before then. And hope this was helpful or amusing or entertaining or something. Thank you for watching. Thank you to those of you who provide support and encouragement through the links available on the support page of my website. You'll see a link to that in the video description. My friends who support and encourage me leave me encouraged indeed. So, thanks so much. See you soon, I hope.